Good evening and welcome to the presentation with Jim Upgren from the Department of Public Instruction on Career Discovery, Academic, and CTE Scholarships. This session will introduce students and parents to the requirements of the North Dakota Academic and CTE Scholarships. The focus will be on the requirements needed to earn the scholarship, as well as the ways that the scholarship can be used. And with this, Jim is a great presenter. He's got a ton of knowledge. So if you have questions, go ahead and you can put your question in the chat or put a question in, and then I will give those questions to Jim as we are going forward. So with that, I'm going to change the presenter over to Jim and let him fill us in on what we can do with the scholarships. Here you go, Jim.
All right. Well, thank you, Cindy, for that kind introduction. A ton of knowledge. I don't know if I've got a ton of knowledge, but I've got enough. I'm willing to share what I've got. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started here. Can you guys see my PowerPoint up there? Cindy, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So let me minimize. I just need to get so I can see the PowerPoint. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty here. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, now can you guys see it in presentation mode, Cindy?
Yes, we're ready to
Excellent.
Go.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, like Cindy said, my name is Jim Upgren. I'm the Assistant Director in the Office of School Approval and Opportunity with the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction. And I'm going to visit with you guys tonight about the North Dakota Academic and Career and Technical Education Scholarship Program, commonly referred to as the State Scholarship. So let's take a look first at what is the Academic and CTE Scholarship. It's a merit-based scholarship. It was created in 2009. It's a $1,500 per year or $6,000 maximum total scholarship that can be awarded to students that meet the criteria. One of the criteria, once you've received the scholarship and are going to be using it, is you do have to attend a college or university in the state of North Dakota. That first bullet on this next slide here talks about where it's listed in the North Dakota Century Code. The scholarship requirements are actually written into state law. So the law basically dictates, as determined by our state legislature, what the requirements are for earning the scholarship. My role in this is, during the fall and wintertime is to do presentations like this and kind of promote the scholarship. And then in the springtime, I'm also the one responsible for going through the applications and seeing which students have met the requirements. And again, it's not me making those decisions. I have to go through and process those according to the way that the requirements are listed in state law. Second bullet on the slide here is the really important part. All students who meet the requirements get a scholarship. So if you meet every single requirement that I'm going to go through tonight for either one of these scholarships, you are guaranteed to get a scholarship. If you miss even one requirement, then you are guaranteed not to get a scholarship. So my purpose in doing this presentation tonight is to make sure that students, parents, schools, whoever happens to be watching tonight has all the information that they need as far as understanding what the requirements are. It always breaks my heart in the spring if I have to deny a scholarship because a student is missing, just one little thing, and it disappoints me even more when the student truly thought that they did meet the requirements. So I always want to make sure that we go through all the requirements, that everybody is aware of what they need. My contact information, I'll put that at the very end of the presentation so that if you have questions yourself, please feel free to reach out to me if it's something you don't want to ask during the presentation here. Cindy, they have the ability to type in questions in the chat. Is that my understanding that correctly?
Correct. There's a question area and chat, and I'll be looking at both of those. Thank you.
Perfect. So go ahead and type your questions into the chat throughout the presentation. We will make sure that every single question gets answered tonight. If you have a question that you'd rather not ask in front of the whole group and would rather just ask me individually, I'm okay with that too. You can either call or email me at any time. A lot of times I get asked the question, what scholarship should I go for? Should I go for the academic or should I go for the career and tech ed? In other words, which one of these is a better scholarship? And quite honestly, they're both good scholarships. They're really both equal scholarships as far as the way they can be used, the dollar amount. The main difference between these two scholarships is going to be the way that it's earned in terms of the high school courses that are required and also in terms of the ACT score and WorkKeys score that are required, so the testing component. We're going to go into all this in some pretty good detail today. Now, I have until 8:30, correct, Cindy?
Yes, and if we go a little long, we're good with that too if there's lots of questions.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to automatically get cut off. I didn't know if I needed to needed to pace myself or anything, but okay, we'll keep that 8:30 time frame in mind just for everybody's just out of respect to everybody's time. Anyways, yeah, like I say, the dollar amount is the exact same for both scholarships, and the colleges and universities in which the scholarship can be used is also the exact same. I've had people ask me before, can I only use the career and tech ed scholarship or the CTE scholarship to go to a place like Wahpeton, which is a career and tech, more of a career technical oriented school? And the answer to that is no. You can use it to go to UND, you can use it to go to NDSU, you can use it to go to Minot State, wherever you'd like. I also get asked the question, can the career and tech ed scholarship only be used to do something specific to a specific career or a technology related field? That's also not true. Okay, so again, the only difference between these two scholarships is the way that it's earned. One other thing that we always have to point out too is that a student can only receive one of these scholarships or the other, even if you meet the requirements for both. And we usually have 100 or 200 students statewide each year that do meet the requirements for both. You can still only use one or the other. Okay, so just make sure you keep that in mind. You can't get 12,000, you can only get 6,000. The general qualifications, I'm going to talk about these in very general terms first, and then after that, we will go into these in more detail. Okay, so the first requirement is going to be a high school grade point average of 3.0 or higher. Another requirement is going to be an ACT score of 24 or a WorkKeys score in the case of the CTE scholarship of 5 or higher. And then that third bullet is the one I really want to draw your attention to, is that the courses that you take in high school are going to matter. There's going to be a prescribed list of courses that you have to take that are above and beyond the graduation requirements that are required for these scholarships. And I would say that the courses that you take in school, not having the correct courses is probably the #1 reason why a student who thinks they've met the requirements for the scholarship ends up not getting the scholarship. So again, pay careful attention to that. And if you have any questions, this is a good time of year. If you do have any questions, especially if you're a senior, it's a good time of year to ask questions. Send me an email, give me a call, and I can let you know if you're on pace. And that's another thing I'll mention too. We'll talk about this in a little more detail too. If you attend public school in North Dakota, we use what's called the e-transcript system to go in and evaluate scholarships, not only during the review period, but also to answer questions throughout the year. So if you are a public school student in North Dakota and you want to call and ask me a question about your transcript, I'm able to log in and look up any public school student in the state. And so I'm happy to help out any way that I can. Another requirement here is that students must be a North Dakota resident. Now, depending on what part of the state you live in, this might seem like, kind of common sense. If you live, like right here in Bismarck, where I'm from, we're a good distance from all of our state boundaries. But if you live in one of the towns that are right next to one of our borders, if you live in Fargo, or if you live in Grand Forks, or if you live in Wahpeton, or if you live in Beach, or if you maybe live in Allendale, somewhere that's really close to a state boundary, if you're a student that goes to school in one of those places, but you live just across the border and you're not considered a North Dakota resident, then you would not be eligible to receive the scholarship. So you must be a North Dakota resident, okay? We'll talk about residency in a little more detail in just a little bit. So anyway, students do have to be North Dakota residents to be eligible for the scholarship.
Jim, I do have a question that came in.
Perfect, go for it.
What if I take technology class because I would like to go to NDSCS? So does that class, I think what he's asking is that class going to make a difference for the scholarship?
Well, that's something where I would need to know more about what class it is. I would need to know a course code number. The easiest way for me to answer that question is probably going to be for that particular student to shoot me an email or give me a call, and I can look them up and see where they stand. That's probably, that's a pretty specific question on a pretty specific course. And I would need to know more specifics as far as what course he's actually referring to.
And then we had another question saying, what
Yeah.
are some of the courses? But I believe you're going to cover some of that. So.
We're gonna go into that. So if once we get through that, if that person still has that question, whoever it was that asked that question, go ahead and ask it again if you have a more specific question on that, and we can do that. And if the student that had the question about the technology class has more specific details on what the course is, maybe towards the end I can try to answer that as best I can. Sometimes it's easier to answer the questions just kind of generally. Other times it is easier for me to take a look at that individual student's transcript. But we'll see how the presentation goes, and we can just go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So once again, the scholarship details, $1,500 per year. Student must be enrolled in college. We've already kind of talked about that. Now, as far as how the scholarship can be used, again, you have to attend a qualifying college or university in North Dakota. You have up to 6 years after graduating from high school to use it. Now, we already said earlier that it's a $1,500 a year scholarship with a max total of $6,000. So you don't get a scholarship every year for 6 years, but you have up to 6 years to use your money. So for example, if you take a year off or you leave the state for a couple of years and then come back, you could use $1,500 per year as long as you're still within 6 years of graduating. So most of you guys are going to be 18 when you graduate. So generally speaking, you can use it up until you're 24 as long as you haven't gone through all of your money. Another nice thing here is that you can use it for either undergraduate or graduate studies. So let's say, for example, you leave the state for your bachelor's, and then you come back and you want to go for your master's, or let's say you graduate with your undergrad in 3 years because you've done a lot of dual credit courses in high school. If you still have eligibility left, you can use that money for graduate school. And then this here is just a list of all of the qualifying colleges and universities where the scholarship is good at. Obviously, our two big universities, UND and NDSU, are both up there. Our smaller 4 years, like Minot State, where I went to school, is up there. Valley City State, Dickinson State. Our 2-year schools like Bismarck State and Wilson State College, all those schools are up there. You can also see that all of our tribal schools are up on the list there. Really, the only thing that, as long as it's a 2 or 4 year college or university in the state, the scholarship can be used there. It can't be used for things like Joseph's Hair Design School or Linus Welding and stuff like that. And again, that's because the way that the law is written, it does have to be an actual 2 or 4 year, an actual college or university. So just a little bit about that. Now, the question I always get asked is, what if I'm going out of state for college? Should I even worry about this scholarship? And I'm going to say absolutely, because you never know. You might end up coming back. We always encourage students to take a look at their transcript and make sure that they're on pace for the scholarship. And then in the spring of your senior year, you need to fill out an application to be eligible for the scholarship. And even if you know you're leaving the state, fill out that application. It takes 5 minutes. It's basically your name, your phone number, your email address. You select what high school you go to, where you're planning on going to college. And there is an option for, out-of-state school on there that you can select if you're, planning on leaving the state. So definitely, even if you know you're leaving the state, make sure that you try the best you can to be on pace and then fill out that application your senior year. So let's talk a little bit more about residency. So again, students have to be North Dakota residents. And then in addition to being a North Dakota resident, you have to graduate from one of the following types of schools. Any high school in North Dakota, whether it's public or private, would count. A home education program. So if you happen to be a home educated student and live in the state of North Dakota, you can be eligible for the scholarship. And then these last two here are going to be those situations that we talked about earlier. So like we said earlier, if you do not live in North Dakota, so for example, if you live in Moorhead and go to school at Fargo Oak Grove, you would not be eligible to receive the North Dakota scholarship because you do not live in North Dakota. But if it was the other way around, if you lived in Fargo and went to, let's say, Park Christian Academy over in Moorhead, then you could be eligible because you are a North Dakota resident. Okay, so if you live in North Dakota and attend a public high school in a bordering state, or this fourth bullet there, a non-public high school in a bordering state, then you can be eligible. Now, when it says non-public high school in a bordering state, you have to still be living with a parent in North Dakota. It's basically designed for, like, if you live in Grand Forks, go to East Grand Forks, live in Fargo, go to Moorhead, that type of thing. You can't move in with your aunt and uncle that live 400 miles away and still claim that you're a North Dakota resident. Then you wouldn't be able to do that. But any questions on the residency requirements? And if there are any questions on the residency, you can type them in later on if you want, and Cindy can answer them. Or if you have a question specific to your situation, just let me know, and I'm happy to help you out with that. Okay, Cindy, any other questions that have come in so far?
Nope, we're sitting at just the 2 I asked, so we're
okay. Perfect.
You're filling them in.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get into. So far, we've talked about how the scholarship can be used. Now we're going to talk about specifically what you have to do to earn the scholarship. Now, the first requirement is graduate high school with the required 22 credits. Now, 22 credits is the state minimum in North Dakota. No student can graduate high school in North Dakota lower than 22 credits. Now, I'm going to say my gut tells me about half of the schools, based on the ones that I've visited with and been to, about half of the schools in the state do require more than 22 to graduate. Some require 23, 24 is a common number. I've even seen some that are as high as 26 and 27. But no matter how many credits your school requires, I always go by the state minimum of 22 credits. And of course, within those 22 credits is you have to have your 4 Englishes, your 3 maths, and all that, which we'll talk about that in a second too. You also have to have a 3.0 cumulative, non-weighted grade point average. So if you go to a school where, to try to get students to take harder classes, they give 5 for an A and 4 for a B, down the line for some of your really hard classes, that has to be reconverted back to a traditional grade scale. So a 3.0 non-weighted grade point. Now, the nice thing about this is we give you notice there's 2 bullets under here. We give you 2 different chances to try to meet that requirement. You can either have an overall 3.0 grade point average, or let's say your overall grade point is like a 2.8, 2.9, something like that. Then we will calculate your grade point just among those 22 specific classes that you need. Of course, again, you have to have your 4 Englishes, your 3 maths, all that stuff in there. So you get a couple of shots to qualify with the grade point, which that's kind of nice. Another requirement is that you cannot have any grade lower than a C for any credit or half credit required for the scholarship. So again, if a class is listed as one of those, it's one of your 22 credits that you need for the scholarship, then you can't have any grades lower than a C. If you end up with a grade lower than a C in one of those classes, you can retake the class, or in some cases, there are some classes that can substitute for others, but in other cases, there's not. Okay, and so when we go through the presentation today, we'll touch on some of those classes that are specifically required. Okay, the testing requirement for the academic scholarship, you have to earn a composite ACT score of 24 or higher. That is the only way you can meet the testing requirement for the academic scholarship. Now, you can take the ACT as many times as you want to. We'll take the highest score, whether it's your 4th score or your 10th score. One of the questions I get asked is, what if I get a 24 the first time and I retake it and the second time I score lower, like a 22 or a 23? We will take your highest score. It doesn't necessarily have to be your most recent. We will take your highest ACT score. Now, for the Career and Tech Ed Scholarship, you have a couple choices. You can either get a 24 or higher on the ACT, or you can get a 5 or higher on each of the 3 WorkKeys assessments, the Applied Math, Graphic Literacy, or Workplace Documents. Most of the students who take the WorkKeys route, usually they do that during their senior year if they didn't get a 24 on the ACT. Most students in the state take the ACT for the first time during their junior year, during that time period when the state pays for the testing, okay? And so yeah, like I said, you can take the WorkKeys anytime you want to. It doesn't matter when you get the passing scores for it to count. But like I say, most students will take it during their senior year if they didn't get that 24 on the ACT.
I do have a question on that, Jim.
Okay, go for it.
So someone's saying is, where do they take the WorkKeys test? Does every school make that available?
Okay, that is an excellent question. We will cover that in just a second, but I will briefly address that. I would recommend visiting with your principal or your counselor. Probably start with your counselor on that. A lot of the schools do offer it right in house there. Some schools don't. I've seen a few things where I've seen some schools, partner up with a neighboring district and say, hey, we have one student that wants to take the test. Can they come over and we'll pay you to have them take the test? Or we do have located throughout the state. Some of the different colleges and universities do offer the WorkKeys test for a fee. I know that Bismarck State College, located right here in Bismarck, will do it by appointment, and I know that Dickinson State does it. I think that there's other colleges. Some of the career and tech centers will do it too. So what I would recommend is visit with your counselor and find out where it's offered at. Find out, number one, if it's offered right there at your school, because if it is, you can just take it right there at school. And if not, they might know where it's offered, or if they don't, they can certainly call me. The person that's responsible for ACT and WorkKeys testing for the state of North Dakota, her office happens to be right next door to mine here at the Capitol. So if anybody's trying to find a place to take that test and just can't find a place, let me know, and I will help you out with that.
Well, I have two more questions that came up.
Okay, great.
Now with the COVID, colleges are waiving the ACT because they will not be giving the ACT now. How do we address that?
How do you do what?
They want to know how is that going to be addressed with the ACT, of taking the ACT, since colleges are not going to be.
Scholarship, the requirement is in state law. We will not be waiving. We do not have the authority to waive the ACT requirement for the academic scholarship. So they do have to. Testing requirements will not change, even though I know a lot of the colleges have said they're not going to require it. So that's a great question.
Okay. And one other, what if I do the ACT and do okay, and then do the WorkKeys and get a 5 on all of them? Does that matter?
Okay, now by definition, when the person asking the question says, if they say okay, if they're referring to did they get a 24 or higher, there's certainly no penalty to also take the WorkKeys if they want to. If when they say okay, if they're saying below 24, if their ACT score is below 24, then they do have to take the WorkKeys. So there's no penalty for doing both, I guess, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
I believe that is. I believe
okay.
you're.
Okay.
And then one more came in.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Where do we have? Do they have the ACT? Where can we take the ACT now? And I'm thinking that that's probably talking to their counselors.
I would start with visiting with your counselor. If you're a junior this year, you will most likely be taking the ACT at your school sometime this spring. And if you're a senior and need to retake it, I would recommend starting with your counselor to see. And again, if your counselor doesn't know, or if you're not able to get an answer doing it that way, like I said, give me a call and we'll put you in contact with somebody that can answer that. Most definitely. These are excellent questions, so I'm really glad you guys are asking them. Any other questions on the testing right now?
We're ready to move on.
Okay, one other thing I want to point out about the WorkKeys before we do move on is that this test is entirely an online test. And so the nice thing is you find out your results as soon as you click submit. With the ACT, it's better now than it was when I was in high school, but and I know that the results got delayed this year because of COVID, but nice thing about those WorkKeys is as soon as you click submit, you find out if you passed or not. So that's kind of a neat deal. Okay, let's see here. Okay, here's one that I definitely want to make sure we spend some time talking about. With the testing requirements, all testing has to take place before the student graduates from high school. Okay, so for example, if you're a senior this year, going to graduate in 2021, the June of 2021 ACT cannot be used if you're graduating in 2021. So that's just an example. Obviously, if you're graduating in 2022, you couldn't use the June of 2022 ACT because it would be after you graduate. Now, last year with COVID going on, we did make an exception to that because obviously we had a lot going on last spring. Students were not able to get into their school buildings to take the WorkKeys test, and ACT testing pretty much stopped statewide. So we did make that exception for last year's seniors. We will not be making that exception for this year's seniors. If you're in a situation where you live in a part of the state where there is no testing available at all, contact our office, let us know, and we will see what other options there are for you to do the test. But please know that number one, the testing requirement itself is not being waived this year, nor is the deadline of having the test taken before you graduate. So if you do have any questions about that, type them into the chat box anytime during the presentation, and we'll go ahead and we'll answer that for you. Here's another thing I want to talk about that's kind of a neat deal for this year. It's going to be what's called ACT Superscores. Now, this was in the process of being developed prior to COVID happening. Starting with this year's seniors, the class of 2021, students can use an ACT Superscore to meet the requirement of earning a 24 or higher on the ACT. Now, what a Superscore is, let's say you take the ACT more than one time. And the way it's traditionally been prior to this year is if you wanted to raise your ACT score, you had to retake the entire test and then hope that you did really well in all 4 areas. A Superscore is going to combine a student's best English, math, reading, and science scores. Those are the 4 areas that are in the ACT test: English, math, reading, and science. It's going to take your best score in each of those areas, and then it's going to combine it and divide by 4 as if you took all those tests on the same day. Now, the original plan was to allow students, let's say that you took the ACT the first time and you bombed the reading part and you wanted to redo just the reading part. The original plan was for ACT to allow you to retake just that section. That all got put on hold because of COVID. But the part with the Superscores is going to be allowed. So if you have a Superscore of 24 or higher, you can use that to meet your requirement of earning a 24 on the ACT on one condition. That condition being that the Superscore must actually come from ACT. So when you fill out an application to retake the ACT, you're going to have to indicate on that application, there should be a place for you to select yes or no on that. You're going to need to indicate that you want a Superscore calculated and issued for you, okay? And then they will, when you get your score report, it'll say your Superscore is 24, 26, 30, whatever it ends up being. What it cannot be is it cannot be a hand-calculated version created by yourself of combining a bunch of ACTs that you took. Okay, so the Superscore itself must come from ACT. Okay, any questions on that, or any other questions that have come up, Cindy?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. Okay, and then with the WorkKeys exam, we already kind of talked about this a little bit, but we'll get into it again. You can take the WorkKeys at your school if it's offered, or at another testing site. It doesn't matter to me where you take the test as long as it's your name on top and as long as I know you're the one that took it. Visit with your counselor to find out where the WorkKeys is offered, and if you're under a roadblock, like I say, give me a call, shoot me an email, and I'll steer you in the right direction. And then another thing with the WorkKeys that's different from the ACT is if you pass the WorkKeys, you do need to make sure that you send a copy of the score report to me at the office here. A lot of times the schools will do that for the student, but it is ultimately the student's responsibility to make sure that this gets done. So once again, if you do pass the WorkKeys, just make sure you send me a copy of your score report. All right, now we're going to get into the course requirements here. And for those of you that had asked some questions about specific courses, maybe this will answer your questions, and if it doesn't, make sure you ask your question again, and I'll do the very best I can to answer it. So first, we're going to talk about courses that are common, required courses that are common to both scholarships. And the first one is going to be the English requirement. You have to have 4 credits of English, and a unit and a credit means the same thing here. So 4 credits of English, that's the exact same as the graduation requirements. So basically, you have to meet your high school graduation requirement of 4 credits of English. And once again, when we go through all these here, all of these are classes that you have to make sure you have C's or better on all of them, and you have to have a 3.0 grade point average, either overall or just amongst these required classes. You have to have 3 credits of science in one of the 2 combinations below, physical science, biology, and any other science, or biology, chemistry, and physics. Okay, so one of those 2 combinations. Okay, that's the exact same as the high school graduation requirement also. For social studies, you have to have 3 credits of social studies. You have to have 1 credit of US history, 1 credit of either problems of democracy, or a half credit of government and a half credit of economics, and then an elective. And that's also the exact same as graduation. Physical education and health, you need to either have 1 full credit of physical education or a half credit of PE and a half credit of health. Okay, now with the math requirement, this is where we're going to start talking about things that are above and beyond the graduation requirement. For the academic scholarship, you have to have 1 credit of Algebra 2, 1 credit of any course that Algebra 2 is a prerequisite for, and then any other math class. So on that second bullet there, the any unit that Algebra 2 is a prerequisite for, that could be college algebra, it could be trigonometry, it could be pre-calc, calculus, statistics, something like that. Now, what a lot of students will do is they'll take college algebra for dual credit and they'll do it for a semester, for a half credit. That's fine, but you need to get a full credit of something that Algebra 2 is a prereq for. So if you do a half credit of college algebra, you need to make sure that you match it up with a half credit of something else, a half credit of trigonometry, a half credit of pre-calc, something along those lines. And then for the Career and Tech Ed Scholarship, it's just 1 credit of Algebra 2, and then any other 2 math credits. So for the CTE Scholarship, you could go Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. The common denominator here is that you have to have Algebra 2 for either one of these scholarships, a full credit of Algebra 2. That's the non-negotiable there. So you need to make sure if you were not planning on taking Algebra 2, if you want to be eligible for the scholarship, you got to make sure you do that. Now we're going to branch off a little bit and talk about each of the individual scholarships here. For the Career and Tech Ed Scholarship, you need 4 credits of career and technical education. Now, career and technical education, and I'm going to, on the next slide, it'll kind of have all the different content areas. This will be things like agriculture, family consumer science, business, health careers, stuff like that. So you have to have 4 credits in career and technical education, and 2 of those 4 have to be in the same coordinated plan of study to go for the CTE scholarship. When you're figuring these credits out, you need to make sure that they are indeed CTE classes. Music does not count, physical education does not count, art does not count, foreign language does not count. So make sure that you keep that in mind. So this is just a list of all the different classes, content areas that are part of Career and Tech Ed: agriculture, business, family consumer science, health careers, information technology, marketing, tech and engineering, trade and industry, and technical education. So this is part of the reason why I didn't want to answer the question about, a technology class, because as you can see here, technology could fall into, several different areas here. So that was kind of why I wanted a little more specifics on what the exact class was before answering the question. Okay, and this is what the coordinated plan of study looks like. So like we said earlier, for the Career and Tech Ed Scholarship, you need 4 credits of CTE. 2 of those 4 have to be in the same coordinated plan of study. And so when we say coordinated plan of study, it has to be in the same column. This is a list of different classes. You need to have 2 full credits in the same column, and then the other 2 credits can be any Career and Tech Ed class. We're going to do a little bit of practice in just a second here with the coordinated plan of study. I'm going to switch from this screen over to the next and take a look at that. So we'll get back to the coordinated plan of study and the CTE scholarship in just a second. Now we're going to shift over to the academic scholarship. Now for the academic scholarship, they used to require you to have 2 years of the same foreign language. Back in 2013, they revised that a little bit, and now it says you need either 2 credits of the same foreign language, Native American language or American Sign Language, or 2 credits of career and technical education in the same coordinated plan of study on that chart like we talked about a second ago. Also for the academic scholarship, you need some advanced coursework. You need to complete one of the following options. Basically, you need some college level coursework. So one option is you can take an advanced placement class for a whole year, a whole credit, and you also have to take the AP exam. You don't necessarily have to pass the AP exam, but you do have to take the AP exam. Okay, so that is one way you can meet that requirement, is to get a full credit of AP and take the exam. A second option is a half credit of dual credit. And dual credit, of course, is if you earn both high school and college credit from the same class. Or a third option is 1 full credit, meaning 1 full year of an early entry college course that's located in North Dakota. The difference between early entry and dual credit: early entry is you're receiving college credit only, but you still haven't graduated high school yet. Dual credit means that you're earning both high school and college credit. They put that third option in there just in case you had a situation where a student, for whatever reason, was not able to get high school credit for like a dual credit or a college class that they were taking. So there's that option there as well.
So there's a question that came, Jim. It says, can you
Okay.
please go back to the foreign language requirements for the academics?
Yep.
They just wanted to if you could review that again. I think it was there was maybe.
So the question was just to go over it one more time.
Yep.
Okay. So for the academic scholarship, you have to have one of the two options listed here. You either have to have 2 credits of the same foreign language. So it could be 2 credits of Spanish, 2 credits of French, 2 credits of American Sign Language, 2 credits of a Native American language, 2 credits of Chinese, whatever it might be. 2 credits of the same foreign language. Or if you don't want to do foreign language, you could do 2 credits of career and technical education in the same coordinated plan of study that are in the same column on one of these charts here. And again, we're going to do a little practice with the chart in just a second here. So I guess the main point is there is an option for the academic scholarship if you either are not able to or do not want to take foreign language. So whoever asked that question, if that explains it to you, if that kind of explains it, then that's good. But if not, if you have further questions on that, please type it in, and I'd be happy to kind of go through it again if that helps out.
Well, they were looking to also take a screenshot, but just to let everybody know that we are recording this, so you'll be able to go back and watch it as many times as you want.
They wanted to do a screenshot of this slide right here?
Yep, and they got it, so thank you.
They did get it, okay. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and we'll move. Any other questions right now?
No, we're good, thank you.
All right. So we talked about this already. Okay, and then there's one additional requirement, in addition to everything we've talked about here, is that students have to have 1 additional credit that can be selected from anything on the list below here. It could be a foreign language, it could be a Native American language, sign language, fine arts, which could include music or art or something like that, or career and technical education. So for example, if a student is going for the career and tech ed scholarship, they need those 4 credits of career and tech ed, but then they still need 1 additional credit to come from this list right here. So if a person is doing CTE scholarship and they've got their 4 CTE classes and they don't want to do any foreign language or sign language or fine arts or anything like that, then they would actually have to take a 5th career and tech ed class to get that requirement. With the academic scholarship, if a student takes 2 years of foreign language, they still need 1 more credit from this list here. It could be a CTE class, it could be another year of foreign language, it could be a music or art class, something along those lines. And then they just need to complete additional credits for a total of 22 credits. I'm going to talk about the educational pathway courses here. These have been around for, I think we're starting our 3rd school year that these have been available. And it's going to be our 2nd school year in which the scholarship has been an option for these particular classes. There's not very many schools in the state doing these educational pathway classes. These are basically classes for students that are interested in becoming teachers, okay? And in 2019, during the last legislative session, they did write it into the scholarship requirements that if a student takes these classes, there are certain ways that it can count towards a scholarship. So for the academic and CTE scholarship, a student, if they take classes in the educational pathway, which I'll talk about the specific classes in the next slide, they can use that to substitute for the 2 years of foreign language or CTE plan of study for the academic scholarship, or they can substitute it for the 2 credits of CTE from the same coordinated plan of study for the CTE scholarship. So what do I mean when I say educational pathway? This is what you need to meet the educational pathway. You need 1 credit in what's called teaching profession, 1 credit in educational methodology, and then 1 credit from the following list there. It could be AP Psych, dual credit Psych, child development, peer-to-peer leadership, or child-related careers. So in other words, if your school offers the educational pathway, there is a way for you to do that and have it count for the scholarship. I don't know if anybody on the line tonight is in a school that has these or is taking these classes. If you do have questions on how the educational pathway works, either type them into the chat box and we'll answer them here, or give me a call, shoot me an email. Either option is fine.
I do have another question that came in, and it goes back to the foreign languages a little bit. Do the foreign language courses need to be offered by my school, or can I take the courses from other sources?
Well, yeah, as long as the person who is teaching the class is a licensed teacher, then you're fine. So if you're talking about taking it on ITV, a lot of students will do it through ITV, where they might have the teacher be in another town or something like that. That is acceptable. You can take it through the Center for Distance Education. That is also acceptable. As long as the teacher is licensed to teach in North Dakota, that would be fine. Any other questions?
That's it thank you.
For now? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. A few other things about the educational pathway courses. These are considered general education classes. They are not CTE classes. So the only way it can count towards a scholarship is if you complete the entire pathway and then have it replace that one section of requirements. If all you need is just extra CTE classes, these classes cannot count for that. So keep that in mind. Okay, the only way the educational pathway can count is if it meets the entire 3-credit pathway to count for the scholarship. So again, if you're at a school that offers these and you have questions about it, either type them into the chat or get in contact with me later and I'm happy to help you out. So we're going to summarize really quick here, and then we'll switch over to a different slide here of courses required for the scholarship beyond high school graduation. For the academic scholarship, you need 1 credit of Algebra 2, 1 credit of math, for which Algebra 2 is a prereq, and then 1 of the following, either a half credit of dual credit or the full credit of AP with the AP exam, and then either 2 credits in the same foreign language or 2 credits of CTE in the same coordinated plan. And then for the CTE scholarship, it's 1 credit of Algebra 2, and then 4 credits of CTE with 2 of those credits in the same coordinated plan of study. So I'm going to pause for a second. This would also be an excellent slide to screenshot if anybody wants to do that. So I'm just going to take just a 10, 15 seconds or so. Get your cell phones out, take a screenshot of this slide. This will be a good one to take there. So, all right.
Are these on, you can find these on the DPI website also?
Yeah, you can find the requirements on the DPI website. You can also find the requirements, they're written into the Century Code if you want to. In addition to that, we have a scholarship brochure that we used to have actually on our website. Because it didn't meet all of the requirements of being ADA compliant, we had to take the brochure down. But if anybody would like a copy of that brochure, email me and I'll be happy to send you an email copy of it. And that has all the requirements in it too.
Another question, is there a link somewhere within PowerSchool that shows if your student is on track with either of these scholarships?
Absolutely. I am so glad that question got asked, and I am looking forward to talking about that in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
I don't want to pick favorites here, but that was maybe my favorite question so far because we do have something for that, and I'm looking forward to talking about it, and I hope everybody takes advantage of using that. So, all right. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to exit out of my PowerPoint here, and we're going to, Cindy and Becca both got a really good example of my technology skills or lack thereof before the presentation started. So we're going to see if I can shift over here. Okay. Are you guys seeing on your screen, and Cindy, you can, I guess, answer for the group. You're seeing the coordinated plan study chart?
You did it great. We're ready. Yep.
Oh, all right. Good. Okay, so let me zoom out. Uh-oh, I'm zooming in too fast. Oh, no. We're just going to go back to actual slides. There we go. Okay. All right, so we've got the coordinated plan of study chart here. And so how this works, we're going to go to the business page. So I've got a few examples here. We won't cover all the examples just because of time here, but for example, a student needs 2 credits of CTE in the same coordinated plan, to meet the coordinated plan requirement. So for the CTE scholarship, it's 4 credits total of CTE with 2 in the same plan, or for the academic, if they don't want to do 2 years of foreign language, it would be 2 credits in the same column. And so how this works is the title of the column is kind of right in the middle. It's kind of tough to understand at first, so I'll just kind of go through it here. So administrative support refers to everything in this first box over here on the left. General management is everything here in the middle, and then accounting is everything over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to throw an example here. If we have a student that takes a full credit of accounting, there we go. The student takes a full credit of accounting over in the left-hand column here. Are you, Cindy, are you able to see when I've got that little cursor over the classes here?
Yep, you're doing great. It's easy to follow. Yep.
Okay. So if a student has 1 full credit of accounting and then also has a credit of, let me go up here, business fundamentals, which is right here. You got 1 credit here, 1 credit here. That's 2 credits in this column here. So that student would meet the coordinated plan of study requirements. But now let's take another example. We're going to pretend that a student has 1 credit of business computer applications over in the middle column here, and then 1 credit of desktop publishing over in this column here. That student would not meet the coordinated plan unless they have some additional classes because they're not in the same column. I'm going to go to the agriculture page. We're just going to do a few of these really quick here, and then we'll go back to the PowerPoint. Introduction to agriculture. Let's say a student has 1 credit of intro to ag over in this column here, or no, we'll use this column here. Intro to ag in this column here, and then they also have a credit of ag mechanics technology. Remember, this is all 1 column here. The title is in the middle. That student would meet the coordinated plan because it's all in this 1 column here. We'll go to family consumer science here. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full year class. It can be semester classes too. So let's say you've got a student that does a full credit of independent living right here, and then a semester of nutrition and foods prep, which is down here, and then a semester of child development, which is back up the chart right here. That makes 2 credits. That's all in the same column. So as long as it's in the same column, then it would count. All right. We'll do 1 more example here. I'm going to give you 1 example of a combination that would not count. And we're going to go to page 7 here. Okay. Let's say, for example, you have a student who takes a credit of construction technology, but then they also take a credit of biomedical technology, which is down here. That would not count because you notice here we've got kind of the solid line here separating these 2. That means these are not in the same column because they're not part of the same plan. So I hope that makes sense. If anybody has questions on how the coordinated plan of study works, I would say, you know how I had said earlier that courses is usually the #1 reason why a student thinks they qualify ends up not qualifying. Narrowing it down even more specifically, it's this coordinated plan of study. It's also the most difficult part of the scholarship, I think, to understand. I do this for a living, and I have to go back and reference it once in a while. So it's definitely something that if you have any questions at all on that, please visit with your counselor, give me a call, shoot me an email. Definitely want to try to help out. Okay, so now
I do have a question that came up.
Okay.
So if you take 2 foreign credits, can you still take the CTE scholarship and you have the CTE, as long as you have those CTE requirements?
Yeah, as long as you, okay, so the question was, if I'm understanding right, can you still get the CTE scholarship if you've taken 2 years of foreign language, basically? And the answer is yes, as long as you also have those 4 credits of career and tech ed with 2 in the same coordinated plan of study. So the foreign language credits would not be able to count for any of those 4 CTEs, but it could count towards those extra credits you need to get up to 22 credits.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so now we're gonna transition back to the PowerPoint.
We do have someone that has said, I've noticed that the names on this chart do not match up with the names of classes on the school class list. How do
Yep.
we make sure the classes the school is offering match up with the CTE requirements?
That is an excellent question. And really quick before I, are you guys seeing my presentation up there again, where it says coordinated plan of study practice?
We're seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah. Coordinated
So
plan.
yeah, that is an excellent question. All of the courses are tied to a state course code. So as long as the state course code number, and your school would know exactly what that means, as long as the state course code number is correct, you'll notice that like when we had that coordinated plan of study, the coordinated plan of study, by the way, is on our website too, if anybody wants to take a look at that. As long as the 5-digit course code number is correct, that's what matters. It is very common for classes to be called something different than that. It's totally okay. As long as the school, and the schools, for the most part, do an excellent job of making sure that they're using the correct course code. So it is something, if you want, check with your school just to make sure that they're using the correct course code. We do have some schools that they don't call Algebra 2, they call it Advanced Algebra, but then they still use the Algebra 2, the 5-digit number for Algebra 2 for the course code. So as long as they're using the correct state course code, they can call the class whatever they want to. They don't have to use our names word for word. Excellent question.
Okay, that's all I have for right now.
Okay. All right, so here's something that I want some younger students to pay attention to. Which scholarship should I plan classes for, the academic or the CTE? And earlier I said that both of these are good scholarships, so you guys can probably tell where I'm going with this question here. Definitely try to, especially early on in your high school career, try to be on pace for both if at all possible. Try to get courses that'll get you on pace for both the academic and the career and tech ed scholarship if you possibly can. Sometimes students will limit themselves to just one or the other, and this happens a lot with the academic scholarship. What will happen sometimes with the academic scholarship is a student might just not be interested in taking career and tech ed classes. You know, they might take a lot of, you know, upper level math classes, dual credit classes, foreign language classes. Those are all excellent classes, but that might be all that those students take, you know, in addition to their math and science and reading and all that. But if that student does not get a 24 on the ACT when they're a junior, if they've taken 0 CTE courses, the only option for them, if they don't get a 24 on the ACT, is to go for the CTE scholarship and try to pass the WorkKeys. But keep in mind, if they're entering their senior year with 0 CTE credits, now they got to get 4 CTE credits during their senior year. Plus they're taking senior English. Plus they're taking you know, government or POD, and they might also be taking another math class too. So my main point here is make sure you get some CTE classes in during your younger years, just to give yourself a little bit of protection in case you don't get that 24 on the ACT.
I have a question that came in. Do you know if these scholarships share requirements with other scholarships?
They might. I mean, I don't know for sure if any of them do. You know, there's a lot of scholarships out there. These are the only 2 that I'm responsible for. I know that the Bank of North Dakota, you know, does have some scholarships. Also check with the North Dakota University system. I don't know of any that line up, you know, like perfectly well or exactly well with our scholarship. But generally speaking, the better you do in school, the higher your grade point average is, the higher your test scores are, the more scholarships you could potentially be eligible for. So kind of an indirect, not really an indirect answer to the question. I think I answered the question directly, but as far as there being other scholarships that line up perfectly with it, you know, maybe not. But again, focus on the GPA, focus on the SAT score, ACT score if possible, and then just look and see what's out there. Visit with your counselor, contact places like the Bank of North Dakota and the university system and the college that you're planning on attending. It's amazing the opportunities that are out there.
Yes, there's a lot of scholarships that go unclaimed because people don't take the time just to look at them. And in some cases, you just have to be left-handed. So you just go ahead and look at those scholarships. And we do have, this is on the state one, but we do have another webinar on scholarships. So I would encourage you to follow that one later.
Perfect. Okay. So how do you know if you're on track for this? This is where we're going to answer that question that the one parent had earlier about going into Power School. So there's a couple ways to know if you're on pace. Visit with your school counselor is one way to do it. Another option is you can definitely call or email me. I'm happy to help you out too. Parents, and actually students, I believe, can do this too. You can access e-transcript. That's what the site is called, e-transcript from PowerSchool, if your school has granted access to parents and students. Right now, I believe 3/4 of the schools in the state have done so. Okay, and so what this is this is a chart that will show, it'll basically have every single requirement, it'll show it, and then it'll basically let you know for each of those requirements, either yes, the student's on pace, or no, the student is not on pace. And so to get to that, and by the way, this is only going to be accessible for schools that are on PowerSchool, which would be all of our public schools. There's a few non-public schools that are on PowerSchool. I know that the Dickinson Trinity is. I believe that our Redeemers up in Minot is, but a lot of our non-publics are still not on PowerSchool, and so those students wouldn't be able to have e-transcript. Now, if your son or daughter attends a non-public school that's not on PowerSchool and you want me to take a look at your student's unofficial transcript, send me a copy. I'll be happy to take a look and go through that with you. But so getting back to e-transcript here, as far as how to use e-transcript, you log into PowerSchool, and then there's an applications icon up in the upper right-hand corner. It kind of is like a little box with a little arrow that kind of points towards that upper right-hand corner. So you click on the applications icon, and then from there, you're going to be able to click on North Dakota Education Portal. And then what that'll do is it'll put some tabs on the top for however many students, sons or daughters you have, and you'll select which one of your children you want to take a look at. And then from there, you click on the North Dakota Scholarships tab, and then click on Progress Monitoring, and that will pull up a copy of their transcript, and it'll also have a chart that'll show which requirements the student has met and which requirements the student has not met. So parents, I do encourage you to take a look at that if you happen to be in a district where it has not been opened up to parents. And if it has not been opened up to parents, you're not going to be able to do anything other than log into PowerSchool. So that'll kind of be a way you'd be able to find out. I do have a list here of which schools haven't either. So if you run into trouble, you can call me and I can let you know whether or not your school has opened it or not. But if your school hasn't opened it, it's certainly something you can suggest the school do if you'd like to do that. They are not required to open it, but it's something obviously we'd like them to if they could. So let's see. Okay, seniors and parents of seniors, make sure you pay attention to this. The applications will become open in January. The web link is located on our website to go ahead and apply. We'll open up the applications on January 4th, and then the deadline will be June 4th. If you apply and do not get a confirmation email, let us know right away. Send me an email or give me a call so we can see what happened to the application. And then by the end of June, by June 30th, we notify all of the students that have applied on whether or not they receive the scholarship. And by the way, I think we've mentioned this. Maybe I forgot to mention it earlier. By law, every single student that meets all the requirements gets a scholarship, which means it's not limited to the first 1,000 or first 2,000 or anything like that. So really, you're not really competing against other students. You're competing, it's you yourself, and you're competing against a list of requirements. So just something to keep in mind with that.
And there is a question. Can you use academic scholarship if you get the North Dakota Scholars Award?
You can, yes, that's a good question. North Dakota Scholars, really quick, that's through the university system. The North Dakota Scholars basically gives, and don't quote me on the exact details here, but I believe it's a full ride scholarship to any in-state public college or university to the top 5% of ACT scores in the state. Usually you have to score at least a 33 or a 34 to have a shot at it. I believe what they do is if you happen to be in the top 5, I believe you get it's a full ride to any public school. I'm not sure if it's full tuition or if it's room, board, and everything.
I believe it's full tuition for 4 years.
Okay. And then if you go to a place like Mary or Jamestown or something like that, and by the way, you can use a state scholarship at our private schools too in the state. But if you go to Jamestown or Mary, then I believe they will give you the equivalent of what it costs to go to NDSU or UND. But anyways, getting back to the question, can you get both of these scholarships? Absolutely, you can. In fact, what usually happens during the time of year when the university system is going through and awarding the North Dakota Scholars Awards is that any other scholarship that a student earns first gets paid before the North Dakota Scholars money. The reason they do that is because they want to be able to give as much of that money away as they possibly can. To, you know, if one student doesn't need it, they want to make sure that they give it to somebody else. So if you, let's say, for example, you end up qualifying for both, what they'll do is they'll take your $6,000 for the academic CTE scholarship and apply that to your account first, and then whatever else that you need after that, they'll apply that. So kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but I hope that answers it.
Thank you.
Okay. This is just what the web page looks like here. To go ahead and apply, you'll need a North Dakota login. You can sign up for one if you don't have one. It's, if you ever bought a hunting or fishing license in North Dakota, there's other things you can do with it too. You can go ahead and use that login and get in and set up. And like I say, it only takes about 5 minutes to complete that application. So if there's any other questions, feel free to type them in. Here's my contact information here. This will be another screen to take a screenshot of for more reasons than one. You got my contact information, but then you also got my two little buddies on there. Rishton on the right is 3, and Odin on the left is 1. Actually, Rishton turns 4 in a month and a half. Odin turns 2, like, gosh, next week already. It's his birthday. Wow, I gotta go shopping for a present or something. But anyways, please reach out to me if you have any questions or if there's anything I can help with. Visit with your school counselor about testing and trying to help you out with the scholarship. Parents, I definitely encourage you to check out Transcript and see if your sons or daughters are on pace for the scholarship. Cindy, are there any other questions that are are in there? Yep. Okay.
One more. So,
okay.
So they want to know, so you couldn't use the academic scholarship for room and board if you had the North Dakota Scholars Award for tuition.
Okay. So what they do is, let's start with the academic CTE scholarship. Okay, so if you are awarded the scholarship and you're going to NDSU, basically what happens is the university system will send $1,500 a year, actually technically it's $750 each semester, to NDSU, and NDSU will just apply that to your total bill. Usually what the university will do is they'll have your bill of your tuition is this, and your fees and books is this, and your meal plan is this, and your cost of living in your dorm is this, and they've got your total. What they'll do is they'll take that $750 and just deduct that from your total bill. Now, let's say that you're also getting ND Scholars. After they do that $754 that you got from the state scholarship, then they'll take whatever money that they have for you for that and apply it to the rest of that part of the bill. So it's not that this really goes towards tuition particularly or room and board. Basically, it goes to wherever you're going to college, they deduct it from your total bill. So let's take 2 colleges, for example. We'll use University of Mary and Dakota College of Botano, for example. Obviously, 2 universities, both excellent institutions, but there is a pretty big price gap between what the 2 cost. Each university, the student's getting $750, no matter what. So it just gets applied to the total bill.
Okay, thank you. So
yeah.
I'll make another call to see if anybody else has any other questions, and we'll just wait just a second. And while we're waiting, I can go in and go over, we do have some upcoming programs also coming up. So we also will have the academic and CTE scholarship that will be recorded, and as long as you were on, that will be sent to you. So that when that is finished, so you'll be able to see that. And we definitely want to thank Jim. Jim is just a wealth of knowledge and is always open for questions. He's always been a great proponent and helps anybody that he can. I've worked with him for a couple of years, and somebody who has such a great passion to help students. It's really wonderful.
Well, thank you, Cindy. Thank you very much for having me here. I've enjoyed it. I hope I've answered some questions. I know that we had a couple of people earlier in the presentation that had some questions about individual classes. If those people want to type, if I wasn't able to answer those questions, if those people want to type in those questions, you can do that now, or if you just want to email me or call me directly, I'm happy to help out any way that I can. So again, my goal is to make sure that if there's any questions or if there's any students off pace, we catch it in the fall where we can still do something about it. If we don't catch it until April or May, then it's too late. So thank you again for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And I will also just say, is there one more call for any questions? I will stay on the line as long as there's any questions. Cindy, do you see any other questions coming across there?
No, I think you've answered most of them, and I'm just going to put in a plug for Go to Career Discovery. We are continually updating different presentations, or if there is something that you would like to hear us get a presentation for, please contact Bank of North Dakota, or you can contact me. I'm Cindy Sanford, like the hospital, at nd.gov. And we're continuously adding the different programs onto the career discovery, and all of them prior to today have all been recorded, so you can go back in and watch them. So the ones we have coming up on next Tuesday is Money Moves After High School, and that is by Lance Hill here at the bank. It's going to talk about money management going on to college. It actually is for 7th grade up through college. It's really a good program. Then we have the agricultural panel, which is on October 29th, and they will go over all the different careers that are available in North Dakota and the different career plans that the 3 panelists have had. And I believe they're also going to talk about a couple scholarships that are available in agriculture. So then if you stay on the career campus, you can continue to go down. We have programs through November. And don't forget that date of January 4th that Jim mentioned to start doing that application.
And the more important date to keep in mind is June 4th, because that's the deadline. If you miss January 4th, you always have January 5th, but June 4th is the drop dead. So make sure you get those applications in, as soon as we're back from Christmas break, and start seeing them come in.
All right. Well, thank you. We've had a great crowd, and I appreciate everybody's time. And I can just tell by all the questions and your interaction with everyone, Jim, we appreciate it. That I think you've answered most of the questions, and they've got your contact. So if they have others, we'll get back with you. So with that,
all right.
Good evening, and thank you very much.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.